The great hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with the sound of life support systems. Dozens of environmental suits hummed and hissed as they kept their owners alive in the station's controlled atmosphere. The air itself was a careful mixture designed to be breathable by most species, but none of the delegates trusted it enough to remove their protective gear. Captain Zexther stood at the center of the gathering, his massive form encased in a suit that glowed red with heat exchangers. Steam rose from vents along his arms as he gestured wildly, telling his story to the assembled crowd. The acid rain came down like liquid fire, he boomed, his voice crackling through the suit's speakers. It ate through the hull of my ship in minutes. I had to crawl through maintenance tunnels while the metal dissolved around me. The temperature outside was 200 degrees, hot enough to melt most metals. The other delegates listened with a mixture of respect and competition. Each one had come here to prove that their homeworld was the most dangerous, that they were the ultimate survivors in a galaxy full of soft, weak species. Commander Veltara stepped forward, her blue-tinted suit covered in frost despite the warm air of the station. Ice crystals formed and melted constantly on her helmet as her internal cooling systems worked overtime. "Your heat is nothing," she said, her voice cold and sharp. "Try surviving on Chrysos during storm season. The temperature drops to minus 300 degrees. The wind carries ice shards that can cut through armor. I once spent 6 months trapped in a bunker while the planet tried to freeze me solid." She raised one armored hand, and everyone could see the scars through the suit's transparent sections. Deep gouges ran along her arm, where ice had cut through her protective gear during countless battles with her world's frozen Hell. Dr. clicked his mandibles together, the sound echoing through his insect-like suit. His world of graviton had shaped him into something that looked more like a mechanical spider than a living being. The suit he wore was less protection and more like a walking tank. "Both of you speak of weather," he said, his voice buzzing with electronic distortion. "But weather is temporary. Gravity is constant. On graviton, the gravity is 15 times what most species consider normal. Every step is a battle. Every breath takes effort. I was born in pressure that would crush your bones to powder in seconds." To prove his point, he activated his suit's demonstration mode. The armor plates shifted and compressed, showing how much his body had adapted to survive crushing force. Several smaller delegates stepped back in fear. Around the hall, other representatives nodded and murmured appreciation. There was Captain Rexstar, whose suit protected him from the radioactive storms of his homeworld. His species had evolved to feed on radiation, but even they needed protection from the worst storms. There was Commander Sylphon, who came from a world where the very air was poisonous to most life forms. Her suit constantly filtered and recycled her breathing mixture. Each delegate wore their environmental gear like armor, like medals of honor that proved their toughness. To remove such protection would be not just dangerous, but shameful. It would admit weakness, admit that they were not the ultimate survivors they claimed to be. The conference had been going on for 3 days now. Each species took turns describing the horrors of their homeworld, the challenges they faced, and how they had overcome them. They shared techniques for survival, traded stories of near-death experiences, and bonded over their shared disdain for the garden world species, who lived in comfortable, safe environments. "We are the true children of the galaxy," announced Ambassador Thexlon, whose suit was designed to handle the crushing depths and corrosive waters of his ocean world. "While others hide behind technology and comfort, we have grown strong through struggle. We have earned our place through suffering." The assembled delegates roared their approval, or at least made the closest sounds their species could manage. It was a celebration of hardship, a gathering of those who had looked death in the face and survived. That was when the mech communication system chimed with an incoming message. The sound cut through the noise of the celebration, drawing everyone's attention to the main display screen. A small vessel had appeared on the edge of the system, requesting permission to dock. "Unknown vessel, please identify yourself," came the voice of the station's traffic controller. "This is the survey ship Wanderer," came the reply. The voice was calm and pleasant, speaking in clear galactic standard. "We're explorers from a world called Earth. We heard about your conference and hoped we might be able to observe and learn about other civilizations." The delegates looked at each other with curiosity and amusement. None of them had heard of this Earth before. The voice sounded young and inexperienced, probably from some sheltered garden world where the biggest danger was bad weather or unfriendly wildlife. "Permission granted," the traffic controller replied. "Docking Bay 7 is available." Captain Zexter laughed, steam rising from his suit's vents. "Another soft species coming to hear real warriors talk. They probably think they're tough because they survived a thunderstorm." Commander Veltara's suit systems hummed as she nodded agreement. Garden Worlders always think they understand hardship until they meet real Deathworlders. This should be amusing. Dr. Clicker clicked his mandibles again. "Perhaps we can educate them about what real survival means. Show them what it takes to be truly strong in this galaxy." The delegates settled back into their storytelling, eager to see the reaction of these newcomers when they heard tales of real hardship. They expected to see fear, awe, and a quick realization that some species were simply better adapted for survival than others. None of them could have imagined what was about to walk through their doors. The docking bay doors hissed open, and all conversation in the great hall stopped. Every delegate turned to look at the entrance, curious to see what these newcomers from Earth would look like. They expected to see the usual sight of visitors from garden worlds, beings in lightweight environmental suits designed more for comfort than survival, probably nervous about being around real Deathworlders. What walked through the doors made everyone pause in confusion. Two figures entered the hall, moving with easy confidence. They were bipedal, roughly the same height as many species in the room, with pale skin and dark hair. But what shocked the assembled delegates was not their appearance. It was what they were not wearing. No environmental suits, no breathing apparatus, no protective gear of any kind. Jake Martinez wore simple dark pants and a blue shirt with some kind of symbol on the front. Amy Collins had on similar pants and a red shirt. Both carried small bags over their shoulders and seemed completely relaxed in the station's atmosphere. Captain Zex's suit sensors immediately began scanning the newcomers, trying to detect hidden life support systems. His readings showed nothing. No force fields, no microsuits, no breathing enhancement devices. These beings were walking around in the open air like it was perfectly safe. "By the fires of Infernus," he muttered, steam rising from his suit's vents. "Are they insane?" Commander Veltara's ice-covered helmet turned toward her fellow delegates. "They must have some kind of hidden protection. No species can survive an open station atmosphere without help." Dr. Clipter's compound eyes focused on the humans through his suit's vision ports. His species had excellent eyesight, and he could see no signs of any protective technology. Perhaps they are robots? Artificial beings designed to look organic? The humans looked around the hall with obvious interest, taking in the sight of all the environmental suits and the various alien forms within them. Jake pointed to something on the far wall and said something to Amy in a language none of the translators recognized. She nodded, and they walked further into the room. It was Commander Veltara who first approached them, her concern overriding her confusion. Her suit's speakers crackled as she tried to communicate. "Excuse me," she said, her voice distorted by the suit systems. "You appear to be experiencing a life support emergency. Please remain calm while we contact medical assistance." Jake looked up at her towering blue-tinted form and smiled. Oh, we're fine, thank you. Just looking around. This is an impressive station. Amy nodded agreement. The architecture is fascinating. How many different species contributed to the design? The commander's suit systems ran a quick atmospheric analysis of the area around the humans. The readings showed they were breathing the station's standard atmosphere mixture with no problems. Their heart rates were normal, their body temperature stable. By all measurements, they were perfectly healthy. I do not understand, Beltara said slowly. You have no environmental protection. How are you surviving? Surviving what? Amy asked. Genuinely puzzled, Dr. Clicker scuttled over on his mechanical legs, his suit's sensors working overtime. The atmospheric pressure, the gas mixture, the temperature variations, the potential pathogens. Any one of these factors should be fatal to an unprotected organic being. Jake looked around at all the suits and equipment, finally understanding their confusion. Oh, you mean this air? It's actually pretty nice in here. Very clean. Good temperature control? Good temperature control? Captain Zexter had approached now, his massive red glowing form towering over the humans. The station maintains an atmospheric temperature that would freeze most species solid without heating systems. Amy pulled a small device from her bag and checked it. It's about 72 degrees in here. That's actually perfect for us. Maybe a little warm, but comfortable. The aliens exchanged glances through their helmet displays. 72 degrees in their measurement system was indeed the station standard, but it was considered barely survivable by most species without assistance. Perhaps you are from a world with similar atmospheric conditions? Suggested Ambassador. Vex Lon, his deep water suit making gurgling sounds as he spoke. Earth has lots of different conditions, Jake said. This feels like a nice spring day back home. More delegates had gathered around now, forming a circle of confused environmental suits around the two humans. The sight was almost comical. Dozens of beings in advanced life support systems staring at two people in simple clothes. Amy reached into her bag and pulled out a piece of fruit. It was round and red, with shiny skin. She bit into it with a satisfying crunch, chewing casually, while the aliens watched in horror. You are consuming unprocessed organic matter, Dr. Clicker said, his voice rising in pitch, in an uncontrolled environment. The bacterial contamination alone could kill you in minutes. It's just an apple, Amy said between bites. Want to try some? Oh, wait, you probably can't eat it through your suits. The delegates were beginning to realize that something was very wrong with their understanding of the situation. These beings called humans were doing things that should be impossible for any organic life form outside of their native environment. What kind of world is this Earth? Commander Valtara asked carefully. It's home, Jake said with a shrug. We're explorers. We travel around looking for new places and new people to meet. When we heard about your conference, it sounded interesting. Explorers, Captain Zexter repeated slowly. You travel to different worlds without environmental protection? Well, we bring supplies and equipment when we need them, Amy said. But mostly we just adapt to whatever we find. That's kind of what humans do. The word adapt sent a chill through the assembled delegates. Most species were specialized for their home environments. They could not simply adapt to new conditions. Without massive technological support. Would you like to observe our conference? Dr. Clicker offered, trying to regain some control of the situation. We are sharing experiences about survival in the galaxy's most dangerous environments. That sounds great, Jake said enthusiastically. We love learning about how different species handle challenges. Though you should be warned, Commander. Valtara added, we will be discussing very dangerous conditions. Many garden world species find our stories ... disturbing. Amy finished her apple and tucked the core back into her bag. Don't worry about us. We can handle it. The delegates led the humans to a seating area, still confused, but growing more curious by the minute. As they walked, they could not stop staring at these strange beings who walked around without protection, breathed unfiltered air, and ate raw food like it was perfectly normal. None of them could have predicted that within hours, their entire understanding of what it meant to be a Deathworlder would be completely destroyed. The conference resumed with an odd tension in the air. The delegates had arranged extra seating for Jake and Amy, who sat comfortably without any life support equipment, while everyone else remained sealed in their environmental suits. The contrast was strange and unsettling. Captain Zexter decided to continue where he had left off before the humans arrived. He wanted to impress these newcomers with tales of real survival, perhaps shock them into understanding what true hardship meant. As I was saying, he began, his suit's speakers crackling with authority. The acid rain on Infernus is not like weather on soft worlds. It eats through metal. It burns through rock. I have seen it dissolve a ship's hull in less than an hour. He activated his suit's display system, projecting images of his homeworld. The scenes showed a landscape of bubbling pools of acid, geysers of superheated steam, and skies filled with burning clouds. The temperature readings at the bottom of the images showed numbers that made most species shudder. The surface temperature regularly reaches 230 degrees, Zexter continued. The atmosphere is mostly sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. One breath without protection would burn your lungs to nothing. Jake leaned forward with genuine interest. That sounds like some of the volcanic regions on Earth. What kind of protective measures do your people use when they're working outside? The question caught Zexter off guard. He had expected fear or amazement, not technical curiosity. Working outside? No one works outside on Infernus. We live underground, in protected cities. The surface is death. Interesting, Amy said, making notes on a small device she had pulled from her bag. So your species developed underground civilizations to avoid the surface conditions? Commander Veltara stepped forward, eager to share her own world's dangers. If you think heat is deadly, let me tell you about real cold. Her suit's projectors showed images of Chrysos during storm season. The landscape was a nightmare of ice and howling wind, with temperatures so low that the numbers barely registered. On most species' understanding, -300 degrees, she said with pride. Winds that carry ice shards sharp enough to cut through armor. I have survived in these conditions for months at a time, hunting the ice predators that roam the frozen wastes. The images showed massive creatures that looked like walking glaciers, with teeth made of ice and claws that could tear through metal. Veltara's suit displayed some of her own scars as proof of her battles with these beasts. How do you hunt them? Jake asked with the same interested tone. Do you use energy weapons to melt through their ice armor? Again, Veltara found herself explaining tactics rather than inspiring awe. We use heated projectiles and thermal lances. But the real challenge is not dying of cold exposure while tracking them. Amy nodded thoughtfully. Cold weather hunting is definitely challenging. The gear maintenance alone must be complicated. Dr. Clichter could not let the others have all the attention. His mechanical legs clicked against the floor as he moved to the center of the circle. Your worlds have harsh weather, he said, his compound eyes glittering through his suit's viewing ports. But weather changes. Gravity is constant. Every moment of every day on Graviton is a battle against crushing force. His projections showed a world where everything seemed compressed and flattened. Buildings were squat and thick. The native creatures looked more like living tanks than normal animals. Even the plants seemed to grow sideways, spreading out rather than up. 15 times normal gravity, Clichter announced. A fall from standing height would shatter the bones of most species. Simply walking requires strength that takes years to develop. He demonstrated by activating his suit's compression mode again, showing how his body had adapted to the crushing environment of his homeworld. That must make space travel difficult, Jake observed. How do you adjust to lower gravity? Environments? We wear weight suits, Clichter explained, then paused. Wait, how did you know space travel would be difficult for us? Jake shrugged. Just makes sense. If you're used to 15 times Earth gravity, normal gravity would probably feel like floating. Earth gravity? Veltara's suit sensors focused on Jake. What is Earth gravity compared to galactic standard? About the same as galactic standard, I think, Amy said. Maybe a little higher. We didn't really notice much difference when we got here. The delegates exchanged glances through their suit. Displays. Most garden worlds had gravity significantly lower than galactic standard. The fact that Earth matched or exceeded it was surprising. Ambassador Thexlon decided to share his world's dangers. Perhaps you think the surface is the only place of danger. Let me tell you about the deep oceans of Aquaros. His images showed an underwater world of crushing depths and corrosive waters. Strange creatures with bioluminescent displays swam through. Scenes that looked more like alien nightmares than any natural environment. The pressure at working depth would crush most beings instantly. He gurgled through his suit's speakers. The water itself is acidic enough to dissolve organic matter. And the predators ... double quotes. He shuddered, his suit systems registering his distress. How deep do your people typically work? Amy asked. Our deepest cities are at 30,000 pressure units, Exelon replied. Jake whistled softly. That's pretty deep. Earth's ocean trenches go down to about 11,000 meters. Nobody lives down there permanently, but we've sent people down to explore. You have sent people into crushing depths? Dr. Clicktor's mandibles clicked rapidly. How many died in the attempt? Well, nobody died, Jake said, looking confused by the question. They used submarines and pressure suits. Standard deep-sea exploration equipment. The word standard hung in the air like a challenge. The delegates were beginning to realize that this Earth might not be the garden world they had assumed. Captain. Zexther leaned forward, his suit's heat exchangers working harder as his internal temperature rose. Tell us about your world, you and Jake. What dangers does Earth present? Jake and Amy looked at each other, having a quick conversation with their eyes. Finally, Jake spoke. Well, Earth has a lot of different environments. We have deserts that get hot enough to kill you, polar regions cold enough to freeze you solid, mountain peaks where there's not enough air to breathe, and ocean depths with crushing pressure. Contained regions, Veltara said quickly. Small. Areas that your species avoids, yes? Not really, Amy said. People live in all those environments. Not necessarily the most extreme parts, but close enough. We have cities in hot deserts, research stations at the poles, mountain communities at high altitude, and coastal settlements. With environmental protection, Dr. Clichter insisted. Some protection, sure, Jake agreed. Clothes, buildings, tools, but nothing like what you folks are wearing. The delegates fell silent. The idea that a species could live in multiple extreme environments without advanced life support systems was challenging everything they thought they knew about survival in the galaxy. Commander. Veltara's suit systems ran a quick analysis of her homeworld compared to what the humans had just described. The results were disturbing. If Earth really had all these different environments, and humans really lived in them without major protection, then Earth might actually be more dangerous than Chrysos. But that was impossible. Humans were clearly soft, gentle beings from a garden world. They had to be exaggerating or misunderstanding something. They had to be. The tension in the Great Hall had been building for hours. Captain Zexther's internal temperature was rising, and not just from his suit's heating systems. These humans kept asking technical questions and making casual comments about their world. That made no sense. No garden world species should know so much about extreme survival conditions. You speak of deserts and frozen lands, Sexter rumbled, steam venting from his suit's pressure release valves. But you have never faced real danger. You sit here in simple clothes, breathing station air like children in a playground. Jake looked up at the massive alien with calm eyes. We're not trying to compete with anyone. We're just here to learn? Learn? Zexter's voice cracked with electronic distortion as his anger grew. You think you can learn about survival by listening to stories? Survival is not learned from books or conversations. It is earned through pain and struggle. Commander Veltara's suit systems detected the rising heat from Zexter's anger. Captain, perhaps we should remain calm. These beings are clearly from a protected world. They cannot help being soft. But Zexter was beyond reasoning. The casual way these humans discussed extreme environments, their complete lack of proper respect for the dangers being described, and their impossible comfort in unprotected space. It all felt like mockery to him. I propose a test, he announced, his voice booming through the hall's speakers. If these humans think they understand hardship, let them prove it. Dr. Clichter's compound eyes focused on the captain with interest. What kind of test? My ship has environmental chambers designed for training. They can simulate the exact conditions of Infernus during acid storm season. Let these soft beings experience real survival conditions. The suggestion sent excited murmurs through the assembled delegates. None of them had ever seen a garden world species face real environmental danger. It would be educational and probably amusing. Ambassador Thexlon's suit gurgled as he spoke. The chambers are perfectly safe. If they show proper respect and beg to be released quickly, they will suffer no permanent damage, though they will certainly gain a new understanding of what real hardship means, added Commander Veltara, her frost-covered helmet nodding with approval. All eyes turned to Jake and Amy, who had been listening to this discussion with growing curiosity. The aliens expected to see fear, or at least nervousness. Instead, Amy looked at Jake with raised eyebrows. What do you think? She asked him. Could be interesting to see how they simulate different environmental conditions. Jake nodded. I'm curious about their technology. How accurate are the simulations compared to the real thing? The casual tone of their conversation stunned the delegates into silence. These beings were discussing a potentially lethal test, like they were choosing what to have for lunch. You accept the challenge? Zexter asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice for the first time. Sure, Jake said with a shrug. Just one question. Can we bring some water bottles? Staying hydrated is important in hot environments. The request for water bottles somehow made the situation even more surreal. Dr. Clichter's mandibles clicked rapidly as he tried to process what he was hearing. You wish to bring water? He asked slowly. If that's okay, Amy said. We don't want to break any rules or anything. 20 minutes later, the entire group had moved to Captain Zexter's ship, which was docked in the military section of the station. The environmental chamber was an impressive piece of technology, capable of recreating the atmospheric conditions of dozens of different worlds. Zexter stood at the control panel, his suit systems interfacing directly with the chamber's computers. The other delegates crowded around the observation window, their various suits creating a wall of environmental protection as they prepared to watch the show. The chamber will simulate the surface of Infernus during peak storm season, Zexter announced. Temperature of 180 degrees. Atmospheric pressure at crushing levels. Air composition of 70% sulfur dioxide, 20% hydrogen sulfide, 10% various toxic compounds. He looked at the humans through his helmet's viewing port. The conditions will begin mild and increase gradually. You may signal for immediate extraction at any time. I strongly recommend you do so before serious injury occurs. Jake and Amy stood at the chamber's entrance, looking completely relaxed. Amy had tied her hair back, and Jake had rolled up his sleeves. Both carried small bottles of water. Ready when? You are, Amy said cheerfully. Zexter entered the chamber first, his environmental suit sealing automatically as the heavy door closed behind him. Through the observation window, the delegates watched his suit's displays show green readiness signals across all systems. Then, Jake and Amy walked in wearing their regular clothes. The chamber's atmospheric processors began their work immediately. The temperature started climbing. The air composition shifted to match Infernus's toxic atmosphere, and the pressure began increasing to crushing levels. Zexter's suit monitors showed all systems functioning normally as he endured conditions that would kill most unprotected beings in seconds. Through his helmet's display, he watched Jake and Amy looking around the chamber with obvious curiosity. How are you managing this heat distribution? Jake called out, his voice clear despite the toxic atmosphere. The temperature gradient is really even. Amy nodded agreement, taking a sip from her water bottle. Very impressive climate control. The humidity management alone must be complicated. Outside the chamber, the delegates stared through the observation window in growing shock. Their instruments showed that the atmospheric conditions inside had reached levels that would be instantly fatal to any unprotected organic life. Yet the humans were walking around casually, having a conversation about the technology. This is impossible, whispered Commander Veltara, her suit's sensors running continuous scans of the chamber's interior. Dr. Clickter's mechanical legs clicked frantically against the floor. The readings must be wrong. No organic being can survive those conditions without protection. But their instruments were not wrong. The chamber's conditions matched the surface of Infernus exactly. The temperature had reached 180 degrees. The air was a toxic mixture that would burn the lungs of most species. The pressure was crushing. And Jake and Amy were standing in the middle of it, completely unharmed, discussing the engineering challenges of atmospheric simulation with genuine interest. After 20 minutes, Amy checked a small device on her wrist. We should probably wrap this up soon. Don't want to miss dinner. Jake nodded. This has been really cool, though. Thanks for letting us try it, Captain Zexter. The simulation technology is amazing. Zexter stood frozen in his environmental suit, his internal systems struggling to process what he was witnessing. These soft-looking beings from an unknown world had just survived conditions that would challenge even his own species in full protective gear, and they were talking about dinner. Through the observation window, the assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as the humans walked casually toward the chamber's exit, completely unaware that they had just done something impossible. The chamber's atmospheric systems began returning to normal as Jake and Amy emerged, still looking perfectly comfortable and healthy. That was fun, Amy said, taking another sip of water. What other environmental simulations do you have? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The delegates looked at each other through their environmental suits, each one beginning to realize that everything they thought they knew about survival in the galaxy might be completely wrong. The silence in the observation area stretched on as the delegates tried to process what they had just witnessed. Jake and Amy stood outside the environmental chamber, completely unharmed after 20 minutes in conditions that should have killed them instantly. Commander Veltara was the first to speak, her voice shaking with disbelief. Your readings must be malfunctioning, Captain. No organic being can survive Infernus conditions without protection. Captain Zexter checked his ship's systems 3 times before responding. All systems are functioning perfectly. The chamber maintained exact surface conditions. Temperature 180 degrees, toxic atmosphere, crushing pressure. Dr. Clichter's compound eyes focused on the humans with new intensity. Then these beings are not what they appear to be. Perhaps they are mechanical constructs designed to look organic. Amy laughed, a sound that seemed oddly cheerful in the tense atmosphere. We're definitely organic. Here, check this out. She pulled out her small device and showed them her heart rate, body temperature, and other biological readings. All normal human ranges. That was actually pretty comfortable, Jake added. Reminded me of Death Valley in summer. Hot, but not too bad if you stay hydrated. Death Valley? Ambassador Thexlon's suit gurgled with confusion. What is Death Valley? Desert region back on Earth, Jake explained. Gets up to about 130 degrees on a really hot day. Popular hiking spot, though you have to be careful about the heat. The delegates exchanged glances through their suit displays. 130 degrees was approaching the lower limits of what most species could survive, even with protection. People hike there for fun? Dr. Clichter asked slowly. Sure, Amy said. Earth has lots of interesting places to visit. Death Valley, the Amazon rainforest, Antarctic research stations, Mount Everest. Each one has its own challenges. Commander Veltaras. Suit systems began running calculations. Antarctic ... that suggests a cold region. How cold? Antarctica gets down to about minus 120 degrees, Jake said. Scientists live there year-round at research bases. Tough work, but somebody has to study the ice. Minus 120 degrees, Veltara repeated faintly. And people live there voluntarily? Well, they get paid for it, Amy said with a grin. And they do use protective gear when they go outside. Insulated suits, heated shelters, that kind of thing. Captain Zexter felt his internal temperature rising again, but this time it was not from anger. It was from a growing fear that he was beginning to understand. What about this Mount Everest? Highest mountain on Earth, Jake explained. About 9,000 meters above sea level. The air gets pretty thin up there. People climb it as a challenge. 9,000 meters. Dr. Clichter clicked his mandibles rapidly. The atmospheric pressure at that altitude would be crushing. Or rather, the lack of pressure would cause most beings to suffocate. Yeah, you need oxygen tanks above 8,000 meters, Amy agreed. But people do it anyway, some of them multiple times. They climb a mountain that requires life support equipment. For fun? Ambassador Thexlon asked, his voice barely audible through his suit's speakers. The humans nodded like this was the most normal thing in the galaxy. Commander Valtara's suit systems finished their analysis and presented her with results that made her freeze in terror. According to her calculations, Earth had environmental conditions that exceeded the dangers of Chrysos in multiple areas simultaneously. Your world, she said slowly, has regions of extreme heat, extreme cold, crushing atmospheric pressure, and oxygen-poor environments, all on the same planet. That's just the basic stuff, Jake said. We also have hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, and about 1 million different species of plants and animals that can kill you. Kill you? Dr. Clichtor's voice rose to a higher pitch. Your own planet's wildlife is dangerous. To your species? Amy pulled out her device again and showed them some pictures. This is a great white shark. They can bite a person in half. This is a grizzly bear. They weigh about 300 kilograms and can run faster than most humans. Oh, and this is a black mamba snake. One bite can kill you in 20 minutes. The delegates stared at the images in horror. Most garden worlds had domesticated or eliminated their dangerous wildlife millions of years ago. But surely your species avoids these creatures, Captain Zexter said desperately. Some people do, Jake admitted, but others seek them out. Shark diving is popular. Bear watching too, if you keep your distance. And snake handling is a whole hobby, though that one's pretty dangerous. Your people deliberately seek out deadly predators for entertainment, Dr. Clichter stated, his voice completely flat. Not everyone, Amy said reasonably. Some people prefer safer hobbies like mountain climbing or deep-sea diving. Those are your safe hobbies? Commander Valtara asked weakly. The truth was beginning to dawn on all of them. Earth was not a garden. Earth was not even a normal death world like their specialized homeworlds. Earth was something far worse. A planet with multiple extreme environments, deadly weather, dangerous wildlife, and inhabitants who considered all of this normal. Ambassador? Dexlon's suit systems were running emergency stress protocols as he processed the implications. Your species evolved on a world with multiple deadly environments simultaneously. You are not specialists adapted to one type of danger. You are generalists adapted to survive anything. Pretty much, Jake said with a shrug. Humans are good at adapting. It's kind of our thing. Adapting. Captain Zexter repeated the word like it was a curse. His species had evolved to survive the heat and toxins of Infernus, but they could not survive anywhere else without massive technological support. These humans were implying they could adapt to any environment. Want to test the other simulation? Chambers? Amy asked brightly. I'd love to see how you recreate different atmospheric pressures. The delegates looked at each other through their environmental suits, each one realizing that their entire understanding of survival in the galaxy had been completely wrong. They were not the ultimate survivors. They were specialists who had conquered single extreme environments. Humans were something entirely different. They were survivors who had conquered a world that tried to kill them in every possible way, and then decided to leave that world to explore the galaxy for fun. Dr. Clichter was the first to speak the words that everyone was thinking. We are not Deathworlders. We are just ... adapted. You are the Deathworlders. Jake and Amy looked at each other and laughed. We prefer to think of ourselves as explorers, Amy said kindly. But if it makes you feel better, Earth is definitely what most species would call a death world. Most species, Commander Valtara said quietly, would call Earth a nightmare. The conference ended 3 hours later with a unanimous vote. Humanity was formally invited to join the galactic community as the first recognized Class 12 Death World species, a classification that had to be created specifically for them. The delegates spent the rest of the evening listening with growing amazement, as Jake and Amy casually described human activities like skydiving, bungee jumping, and something called extreme sports that made their own survival stories sound like children's games. None of them would ever think of themselves as the galaxy's ultimate survivors again. That title now belonged to a species. That thought surviving was so easy, they had turned it into entertainment.